Their births made global headlines nearly a century ago when they became the first quintuplets known to survive infancy. Now, according to the Dionne Quints Home Museum in North Bay, Ontario, the last of the Dionne quintuplets has died at the age of 91. In a post on Facebook, the museum says, in part, "It is with deep regret that we announce the passing of Annette on Christmas Eve. Much beloved, Annette has championed children's rights." The museum adding that Annette was the only surviving quint and was the last surviving sibling amongst the 14 children of the Dionne family. The Dionne sisters were born in Northern Ontario in 1934, and the Ontario government cared for the children between 1934 and 1943. Nearly 6 million people from all over the world traveled to see them. According to Cecile Dionne's obituary, the quintuplets at one time represented an estimated $500 million asset for the province. The commercial exploitation of the five sisters eventually resulted in an official apology from the Ontario government and financial compensation. Joining me now is Ed Valenti from the Dionne Quintuplet Museum in North Bay. Good morning. Thanks for joining me today.
Morning.
So, a very sad moment here, Ed. The story of the siblings is, of course, known around the world. But for those of our viewers who may not be as familiar, can you explain what made this family so significant?
Well, the birth, it's funny, I was just reading about identical quintuplets, and the odds are like 1 in 4 billion that was reported on the birth. And so that in itself was is what kind of alluded to the whole miracle birth and how it really rejuvenated a lot of people during the Depression times. And unfortunately, the government turned it into basically like a human zoo. And so it stayed with that legacy and the tragedy that developed over those many years until, they did eventually move away and had some peace away from it. But it was, a unique, very special event that happened. And there were some silver linings out of it, but for the most part, it was a difficult part of our history, certainly from the government's point of view. And we're trying, as you know, our museum in North Bay, Ontario, was making its attempt to showcase what that history was and the legacy and the tragedies that went with it as well.
Right, a really unique and fascinating story. We know that Annette was the last remaining Dionne quintuplet. What does this moment represent in terms of Canadian history?
Well, so in 2018, the Canadian government recognized the birth of the Quints as a historical event in Canadian history. And with Annette's passing, that's more or less at the end of an era for the living relatives of not just the Quints, but also the Dionne family, who were, that whole family was certainly turned apart and with this. When you can only imagine a mother having 5 of their children being taken away from her at 4 months of age. That had to be a very traumatic experience, and certainly the years that followed were very hard on that family.
Tell me why you think this story of the Dionne quintuplets resonates so much with people nearly a century later.
Well, the story about taking away children from, the government taking away children, certainly with residential schools, we do get a lot of Indigenous nations coming through, some from residential schools, and they relate to the experience in the sense that, ripping kids away from their parents. It just shows you that happened a lot more than people might have believed in the earlier days. And certainly children's rights is something that Annette championed at the end.
So you work at a museum that honors the legacy of this family. Tell me how the museum is honoring Annette's life today.
So today, we just getting notice of this event. So we're working on something right now. We don't have anything official in plans. Our board is meeting to go over some kind of a celebration of life for Annette and for, as you know, Cecile passed away in late July. I went to visit Annette shortly after Cecile passed away, myself and another director, and we had a chance to connect up with Annette. You could tell, though, that she was, her health was failing, but certainly, I think we're trying as a museum to educate the public on what happened in the past and how to make sure that that doesn't happen again.
All right, my condolences, Ed. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
That is Ed Valenti, chair of the Dionne Quints Heritage Board at the Dionne Quintuplet Museum in North Bay, Ontario.